Hey, you all know that I have been at the beach for the last few days, getting some much needed rest and relaxation. However, I had to interrupt my vacation because I got to address something that just kind of irritates me. And that is, I recently read that a growing number of African American men intend to vote for Donald Trump, and the reason they give is because of stimulus checks. I'm not making this up. I recently created a video where I reacted to a group of men who were doing a Zoom meeting, and they were expressing why they were, in fact, planning to vote for Trump. And a few of them mentioned stimulus checks and the economy generally. And when I hear men say, or anyone say, that Donald Trump sent them stimulus checks, that tells me that they don't know how our government functions. And that is why I'm taking a few minutes out of my vacation to share with you exactly how our government functions as it relates to who sends the money, who controls the money, what branch of the government does that. Stay with me and I'll explain it to you. Hello, everybody. I am attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Each and every week, we bring you at least one legal analysis of some trending story regarding politics, policies, personalities, or pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. If that interests you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell so you will be notified every time we upload one of these powerful and informative videos. As always, go over to Amazon.com, grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice, where I talk to you about all the things that public schools do to harm African American male students especially, and what you can do about it. So go over there and get your copy of the book, and thank you so much. All right, so stimulus checks. Stimulus checks seem to be a huge reason why African American men under the age, again, of about 40 or 50 years old intend to vote for Donald Trump. I don't think that's a good reason. This man is a white supremacist. He cares nothing about African American people. But some folks, are really considering voting for him. And again, all I hear them say has to do with stimulus checks and the economy generally. Well, I want to set the record straight about something. And that is, Donald Trump did not send those stimulus checks. Whoever gives Trump credit for sending the stimulus checks really don't know how our government functions. So let me take you through that. Let me show you how our government functions. So first and foremost, we have three branches of our government. You have the legislative branch, that's Congress. You got the executive branch, that is the president. And you have the judicial branch, which is all those federal courts, including the United States Supreme Court. Now, when we talk about our government, we have to look to the United States Constitution because it created our government and it controls what the government and what the various branches of our government can and cannot do. When it comes to both taxing, that is collected money, and dispersing or spending money, that is controlled by Congress. That's not controlled by the president. That is controlled by the United States Congress, and specifically the House of Representatives. All right? And that you can find in Article 1, Sections 1 and 8. Both of them talk about Congress's spending power. So Congress is the one who controls the checkbook for our country, not the president. So Donald Trump did not send not one stimulus check to anyone because he didn't have the authority to do so. No president has the authority to send United States tax dollars to anyone to do anything except for what money the president has that belongs to the executive branch, which the president can spend by executive order. But those stimulus checks did not and could not have come through executive order because we're talking about a couple $1 trillion. All right. So that had to come from Congress. And at that time, the Democrats were in control of the House of Representatives. The GOP controlled the Senate, but Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House because the Democratic Party controlled the House of Representatives. So the money had to be approved by the Democrats. Yet so many African-American men under the age of 50-ish, 40-ish, somewhere around there, give Trump credit for the stimulus checks. And that's because they don't understand the way our government functions. Once again, Article 1, Sections 1 and 8 specifically says that Congress controls the purse strings. Congress controls our budget. Congress controls the checkbook. Congress controls who get funds from the United States government. Now, the president has the authority to sign it into law. And if the president doesn't sign something into law, there are cases where Congress can override him. There are cases where Congress can go ahead and authorize that disbursement anyways. All right? That didn't happen here. Yes, Donald Trump signed it into law, but he could not have signed anything into law, could not have sent any stimulus checks. Although his name was on the check, he still could not have sent those checks without Congress first approving the checks. So it's really important that you understand that when you want to give Trump credit for those stimulus checks. There were two different laws that Congress passed to send those checks. One, the CARES Act. Two, the Consolidated Appropriations Act. And both of them approved money to be sent to Americans as a result of COVID. And again, the Democrat-controlled House and the GOP-controlled Senate did a bipartisan agreement there, and that's how that money was sent out. But it's important that you understand that it was the Democrat-controlled House of Representatives that had the absolute authority to say yes or no. And they said yes. The same is true with the Consolidated Appropriations Act. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats controlled the House of Representatives when that money was dispersed. All right. So you're giving Donald Trump credit for something that he doesn't deserve credit for. He put his name on it so that he could use it to try to get reelected. Everything with him is transactional, by the way, right? I mean, he's a con man. So he's always thinking about how can I use this for his benefit. He's always thinking that. So he insisted. In fact, he held up the checks so that he could get his name on the checks. And it worked because so many African-American men think that those checks were the invention and creation of Donald Trump. And they're absolutely wrong about that. Now, there are 6 things I want you to remember about those stimulus checks. Number 1, the purpose of the stimulus checks really was to stimulate the economy. That's why they sent the money to Americans, so that Americans could do what? Go out and spend the money. Go out and take care of your bills so that you're keeping the economy afloat during that pandemic. And this was March of 2020, and then other checks were sent out in December 2020. So the economy was really in a bad situation because of the pandemic. So the purpose of the check, as the name implies, was to stimulate the economy. Secondly, Trump's mismanagement of COVID created the need for the checks in the first place. So if you want to give Trump credit for the checks, you also should give him credit for the reason the checks had to be sent out. He totally mismanaged COVID. Totally. Intentionally, I might add. It wasn't because he was just incompetent. It was because he's immoral and he just didn't do things that a president who cares about people would have done. You could call it presidential malpractice, to be honest with you. But because of his mishandling of the COVID pandemic, the the checks had to go out because the economy tanked. And remember, I've told you so many times, when Trump took office, he inherited a great economy from Barack Obama. And because Trump mismanaged COVID, he caused the economy to tank, inflation to rise, and Joe Biden get blamed for that. Meanwhile, Trump takes credit for an economy that he did not create. All right, what else? Whites got their checks faster. I mean, I can't explain that. I think it's just because of the structural inequities that are sort of built into our system. But I thought you should know, while you're slapping Trump on the back and saying, "That a boy, great job, Mr. President, we want you back in office," keep in mind that the checks went to whites first. The checks can never replace, and this is key, this is very important, the checks can never replace all the lost lives as a result of the pandemic. And Dr. Birx, Deborah Birx, who was Trump's coordinator of the response to the pandemic, said that hundreds of thousands of lives were lost needlessly. In other words, because of Trump's mismanagement. So when you're, again, applauding him for sending out checks, just keep in mind, had he not mishandled COVID, the economy would have never tanked, because the pandemic would not have done the damage that it did. And it's still doing. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris has done so much in trying to tame all the mess ups that Trump left when he left office. So the checks can never replace the lost lives, never. And do keep in mind, many of those lost lives were black men, because black men were out doing the essential work. If you recall, states across the country shut down, and only essential workers could go out and leave the house. Many of those essential workers who make America work every day were black men. And so they were exposed to COVID, and they died disproportionately. So if you're going to erroneously give Trump credit for the checks, give him credit also for all the lost lives, needlessly lost lives, I might add. Some of you probably lost family members because of Trump's mismanagement of COVID. In fact, 2.3 times more African-American men died than other groups. Just keep that in mind. And last of all, Congress approved stimulus checks during the Joe Biden administration. But I don't hear you men who are planning to vote for Trump give Biden any credit. I mean, you got checks because of his work, his diligence, just like you got checks because or during Trump's administration. So why is there some difference in the applause? You don't applaud Biden, you criticize Biden, you critique him, you say he's done nothing for you. With Trump, though, you give him credit where he doesn't deserve it. So the takeaway here is Trump did not send stimulus checks. That was Congress. Trump signed his name to the stimulus checks so that he could get credit for the stimulus checks. And those folks giving him credit for the stimulus checks are people who don't understand how our government works. So just remember, any disbursement of funds from our government, any disbursement on a large scale, that must be approved by Congress. And once Congress approves it, the president signs it if he or she so desires. If not, there are some circumstances Congress can simply override the president's veto and do what it has approved anyway, including dispersing funds. So just keep that in mind. Trump didn't send you any stimulus checks. The money came from Congress. All right? Trump just took credit like he does so many other things. And I'm saying this to you, black men, because I know you're frustrated and you have a good reason to be frustrated, but that frustration should not cause you to support a white supremacist in a white supremacist political party that intends to do so much to harm you. Don't give them that chance. We already messed up in 2016 when Trump was elected, and then he went about putting 3 folks on the U.S. Supreme Court, and those people are going to be on that court for decades to come, undermining all the civil rights that we fought so hard to obtain. Don't give Trump the chance to hurt the African American community and take us back again because you misunderstand how the stimulus checks reached your mailbox. Okay? All right, so I'm Attorney Augustus Corbett. I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to shine some light on this issue because, again, when I hear black men say stimulus checks and the economy, I know that they don't understand. That tells me that they don't understand how our government functions. Now you know. All right, and until the next time, peace.